Hello everyone, and many thanks for your attention, for participating in this stream community chat, which is going to be, as always, news segment first, and then I will get engaged with the chatter, and I will try to be informative in my comments or answers to the questions. Many thanks to all the members of our community who will join later on or will watch this video in a recording. And so without further delay, let's start this live stream. Today is, of course, 11th of May, 6 o'clock in the evening, Moscow time. And the first news difference that I want to share with you is that Russian president, according to RIA Novosti and many other media outlets, had a phone conversation with their Turkish president Erdogan. And two leaders were discussing latest Russian proposal to de-escalate in Ukrainian crisis, to hold direct talks with Kiev in Istanbul on 15th of May, in a couple of days. And we have a report from TASS news agency that Erdogan confirmed to Putin of Ankara's readiness to accept negotiations on Ukraine. So Turkey will host these negotiations if it will take place at all, because most likely, as I reported in today's first update, globalists will block this de-escalation attempt. Globalist puppet regimes in Europe, namely in leading countries of NATO, European NATO members, UK, France, Germany, and so on. And of course, they will not allow their proxy in Kiev to accept Russia's offer. And on this very topic, dear friends, this morning I reported about information in Russian media that US President Trump positively reacted on the Russian president's offer about direct talks, but later on, a special envoy of US President Kat Kellogg made a bit different statement and actually opposed Russian president, Russian initiative. We have his statement here. So even the Prime Minister of New Zealand gets it. I mean, I don't know what that has to have with the Ukrainian crisis, that, even Prime Minister of New Zealand gets it. Who cares, man, about Prime Minister of New Zealand and what he gets or not? He or she, I don't even know who is Prime Minister there. Why should I even have any interest in that? But anyways, as President Trump has repeatedly said, stop the killing, an unconditional 30-day ceasefire first, and during it move into comprehensive peace discussions, not the other way around. Kat Kellogg wrote in Truth Social, I guess, because all these puppets are using Truth Social now as their main rooper. And I wonder now, is this dirty, stupid animal, Kat Kellogg, is speaking on behalf of himself, or this is the position of Trump? I mean, that's a question that I have personally, because I don't care what Kellogg thinks, really. Who the hell is Kellogg, man? I mean, nobody. And I don't really care what Trump really thinks about this matter. What is interesting, what position is of people that are behind the Trump, real decision makers, right? Because Trump himself is just an actor that was put in that place because, he has some charm, I guess, for US citizens. They like this guy and they're okay. I mean, he's been chosen to be representative of this force, whatever force is in charge there, right? Let's call them America First group. Anyways, we will find out soon, I guess. But whatever the case, hardly anyone will argue that Russian President Vladimir Putin, as I said in today's first update, clearly offered the opportunity for US administration to use this proposal of Russia about direct talks between Kiev and between Moscow and Kiev, and the inevitable decline of this proposal by Kiev regime and its European backers as an off-ramp to just walk away from all this bloody mess that was orchestrated by the globalists and the regimes their puppet regimes that were and still are in charge of leading Western countries. Will Trump's administration, will these forces that are in charge of US use this off-ramp, this opportunity to walk away, saving the face? That's a whole different story based on statements of Kellogg. One may argue that, well, Trump and his team, or these groups that are in charge in US now will miss this opportunity, and therefore most likely US will go down in a very same way that Europe is going through, and they will have no opportunity no more to walk away and save the face. And if you have a question, why would Russia allow Washington to save the face, by the way, there can be several explanations for that. Decisions, as far as I understand, decisions by leaders of great powers like Russia are based on long-term strategical calculus, long-term strategical interests, and I can see that in 15, 20, 30 years time, if US will transform into a proper republic, then cooperation between Moscow, Washington, New Delhi, number of other capitals, major capitals in this world, can play immensely important role to maintain balance in this world, right? So therefore, I can see why would Moscow like to offer to Washington opportunity to walk away and save the face, right? And then conduct negotiations, not necessarily publicly, behind the closed door, when US will agree on the concessions, right, for all the harm that was done as a result of US's engagement in this proxy war, and that way Russia, at least on the state level, will not seek revenge, which is a big deal for sure, right? So this is one of the explanations why would Moscow do that. But yet again, I mean, as I already said, question is, will Washington realize how generous Moscow is? For strategical reasons, by the way, that clearly very few people in Washington be capable to understand. But still, this is a very generous offer to take this off-ramp and just walk away until it's not too late. When it comes to European states, when it comes to EU or the former EU member UK, then everything is clear there. These countries are controlled by globalists, vast majority. And therefore, obviously, globalists definitely are in no position right now to acknowledge their defeat. They are realizing that, they are losing, and they are losing big time, by the way, right? And soon, these so-called elites in the West, Western ruling class, that was in charge of Europe for centuries, but we will realize that, it will take only a couple of decades and their relevance will just disappear completely, right? And Europe is going to become a really, loosely relevant or even completely irrelevant part of Eurasian continent. And it will take only a couple of decades, by the way. No, not centuries, but 20, 30 years, and that's about it, right? And that's why they are this desperate. They wanted to establish, they wanted this proxy war to basically destroy Russia, break up it, establish control, and then use resources of Russia for further growth, but they failed. And they've been beaten badly, but still they have no courage to acknowledge that they lost. So therefore, they will continue with their escalation. And that's why EU is rejecting Russian offer to Kiev regime to have a direct talks in 15th of May in Istanbul, as it was done by EU member states and also by UK. And on this matter, by the way, we have French Foreign Ministry's statement that Europe wants to be in Ukraine talks, part of Ukraine talks. It can be maybe done. Some, Moscow may agree to give a chair around the table to European representatives, but question is why? I mean, Europe is already kind of, I mean, irrelevant. So why would Moscow talk to Europe? For what exactly purposes? I mean, European elites might dream about many things, but why should we care about it? I guess similar reading of this initiative of French foreign ministry will be in the Kremlin also. I mean, people there will probably say, I mean, okay, they might dream about whatever, but are we really interesting to listen to these anomalies? Not really, isn't it? But anyway, this is not a major issue. Major topic is, of course, is that Russia, by issuing this initiative of direct talks with the Kyiv regime, on which it was obvious from the beginning that Kyiv regime would not be able to agree. They will have no permission on that from the globalists and their puppet regimes in Europe. But by offering these direct talks, Moscow created their off-ramp for US, and that's the only question I have. Will forces that are in charge of US will acknowledge this, will see this opportunity, and if they will use it or not? Or are they gonna go down together with their Europe? I don't know. Anyways, we will find out soon, isn't it? But when it comes to Ukrainian crisis, as I said many times before, no one should expect a quick de-escalation, because before true de-escalation begins, we will see at least one or maybe even several phases of escalation, after which European elites eventually will either be forced to face the reality and acknowledge that they lost, and they will start de-escalating, or they will just run out of steam. They will run out of resources to further continue this proxy war. And also, one should keep in mind that Kyiv regime is weakening, right? Kyiv regime is weakened, Kyiv regime's forces are weakened. Every day, by the way, more and more videos about this desperate attempt of Kyiv regime to kidnap people on the streets and conduct this forceful mobilization. So Kyiv regime's force is gonna collapse just at any moment. And I guess this is exactly their judgment of the Western secret services, and that's why these European globalist puppet regimes are this desperate to somehow push this 30-day ceasefire, so that their proxies will get a months-long break, right? And you should also keep in mind, dear friends, that French leadership, German leadership, they already said that even if Moscow would agree on ceasefire, they will continue to send weapons, they will continue to assist militarily, financially, they will do whatever it takes to strengthen their proxy in Kyiv, right? They are not even hiding this, by the way, right? Once again, highlighting how correct the Russian position is, that this 30-day ceasefire makes no sense, because why would Russia give a break to the enemy forces, months-long break, so that our enemy will receive more weapons, more munition, more intelligence, more money, and have a opportunity to rest? I mean, why would we do this? It's nonsensical, isn't it? So it is what it is, man. Meanwhile, of course, it's not just Ukrainian crisis, but there are other regions also in this world that are experiencing some turbulence. And for example, even though between India and Pakistan ceasefire being negotiated, and it is a ceasefire now, we are receiving more and more information that, for example, India names the number of terrorists that were killed during the Operation Sindoor, and well, this number is over 100. So during the Indian strikes, more than 100 terrorists were killed there. I guess significantly more were wounded, and this is quite an achievement, of course. At the same time, all day, by the way, today I'm monitoring Telegram channels on additional information, and I see many satellite images of these tit-for-tat strikes that India and Pakistan was conducting during the previous days, with missile strikes, drone strikes, and so on. And I can tell you, dear friends, that I have impression that, India did prevail in its operations and did manage to come out on top. They managed to deal significant damage to military capabilities of Pakistan, while having some losses. Obviously, this was a significant escalation. But I think, strangely, somehow China and the U.S. get entangled in this assault on India, not just militarily speaking, but also in terms of propaganda. And I find it quite fascinating. I mean, US and China, they're supposed to be like, on different sides, but in regards to India, they somehow allied in strange ways. And for example, both countries were pushing actively to promote propaganda that Indian armed forces were unsuccessful, weapon systems that India was using were useless, right? And one may think, why would China and the US do that? While they are making these claims without any evidences. And the answer is simple, by the way. Both military industrial complexes in both countries want some points, right? They want weapons to be sold, their weapons. And Pakistan is operating with their Chinese weapon systems, Chinese jets, Chinese missiles. Also, Pakistan is operating with US weapon systems, while India mainly operates with either domestically built weapon systems or Russian weapon systems. And lately, India started buying these French Rafale planes that US propaganda tries to describe as a completely useless plane. And you know why? Because US was trying to push FA-18s, by the way, for India. They wanted India to buy not Rafale planes, but FA-18s. And also US wanted India to buy F-35s. Also, US wanted India to buy their THAAD air defense systems, while India chose Russian S-400s. And that's why all these days, by the way, propaganda is pushing this crazy narrative that this S-400 was destroyed, while India is denying these claims, and it's exactly the opposite. I saw several reportings on YouTube from Indian media outlets, and based on those reports, S-400 actually proved itself to be very effective air defense systems. I don't think it needed any additional advertising. S-400 is the second best air defense system in this world, and first is S-500, right? Also a Russian one. But yes, I mean, strangely enough, but this interests of China and the US kind of entangled in this assault on India, military assault and also media assault. And I will say India withstood this assault and did quite okay, right? And India has more reasons, by the way, more reasons to be focused on domestic weapon systems, to build up its own military industrial base. And in this regard, which country was always helpful to India? It was Soviet Union and Russia, by the way. And I guess from now on, India will have even more incentives to further increase cooperation with Russia, especially in terms of transferring technologies to India and transferring manufacturing and building manufacturing base there. And Russia, I believe, is ready. I mean, just a month or two ago, Rostech, I believe, offered the building in India Su-57 fighter jets, 5th gen fighter jets, and transfer of this technology definitely will definitely be helpful for India in many ways. And I remind you, dear friends, that one of the most successful Indian missile system, BrahMos, is a weapon system that was built by Russian and Indian engineers in close cooperation between the military industries of the two countries. So let's continue. And there are media outlets, more and more media outlets, by the way, are reporting that Trump could recognize Palestine. So US President Donald Trump could formally recognize Palestine at the upcoming Gulf US Summit in Saudi Arabia. The news outlet Media Line has reported, citing unnamed diplomatic sources. I reported about such a possibility a couple of days ago, and I shared my take on this whole story. Why would US take such a step? Especially if you keep in mind that US political class is brought and paid by Israeli lobby, right? And my reading of the big picture is that I think Trump's administration is on board with Netanyahu's regime to attack Iran and to make sure that Gulf states will either stay neutral or in some cases maybe even help US and Israel and their potential allies in these military hostilities against Iran, in this war against Iran, basically. Trump might offer local regimes in the Middle East something to brag about, to calm down, let's say, local populations, right? Because these regimes, by the way, are not as strong as one might think. And people in many Gulf countries and in many countries in the Middle East in general, regimes that are heavily dependent on the West are quite fragile. And they're experiencing significant opposition from the public, even if it's not displayed that openly. And so maybe that's the game plan on part of US, that they will recognize Palestine. If that will change anything on the ground, it will change nothing on the ground. Israel will continue to do what it does. But Gulf countries, countries in Middle East, let's say majority Sunni Muslim countries, leadership of those countries will have something to brag about and present as a huge victory that US recognized Palestine. And same time they will justify their either neutrality or even participation in aggression that Israel and US and their allies that are about to unleash on Iran. Maybe that's what is happening, but. And some Western propaganda outlets are pushing narrative that, well, relationships between Trump and Netanyahu is getting cold, and Washington is distancing itself from Israel. I mean, I think this is just a propaganda, by the way, not the truth. Because yet again, we know for a fact that US political class, including Trump, by the way, is brought and paid by Israeli lobby. It's just factual, right? According to some reports that they see, Trump received from Israeli lobby, or the elements that are closely related to Israeli lobby, over $100 million for its presidential campaign. And you think this money was given for what? For nothing? Come on, man. So that's what is happening, by the way, and therefore Iran, even though Iran is trying as much as they can, Iranian leadership, to be engaged in a diplomacy, and they are trying as much as they can to de-escalate, but I'm afraid they would not succeed in that because US leadership is not honest in these negotiations. That, for example, took place today in Oman, 4th round, and Iranian representatives already announced 5th round of these talks with US, but yet again, this is just a PR stunt for US leadership. They will eventually make sure that these talks will go nowhere, and at some point Washington will just say, you know what, we had enough, we tried diplomatically, we tried this and that, and nothing works, so therefore we have to resolve through military actions. That's the game plan, as far as I understand, right? So Iran should get prepared, and that's why, by the way, I think because US leadership knows that they're gonna get engaged with Iran, I think that is one of the reasons why current leadership in US kind of tries to pull out US from proxy war against Russia and to de-escalate with Russia, because I don't think they really want Russia to seek revenge on a state level, by the way. In whenever conflict, US will get engaged, especially in the big conflicts, and war with Iran gonna be massive undertaking on part of US. It's not gonna be easy work for sure, and US not gonna defeat Iran in no circumstances. So there is, and everything is kind of connected with with other all these major developments in the world. I mean, if you think about it, are somehow really connected to each other, right? Seems like this is all part of a plan, bigger plan, kind of. But anyways, I think when US with its allies attack Iran one way or another, but Russia will support Iran. And even if Washington and Moscow will agree some sort of, will reach some sort of agreement, and US will agree on the concessions, US will walk away from this proxy war, agree on the concessions, massive concessions to Russia, as it should, for all the harm that was done by US. Even in that case, maybe Moscow will not seek revenge on US on state level, but one should keep in mind that many very influential groups here in Russia will seek revenge in any case, all around this planet, to harm US as much as possible. And this is going to be forever stuff. Because, tens of thousands of Russian citizens died as a result of this proxy war in which US was playing and still plays key roles. So no one gonna forgive or forget, right? And trust me, there are some very powerful groups of interests, let's say, groups of people that have enough means to seek revenge forever. In many ways. In every ways. And while all this stuff is happening, take a look at this news, dear friends. US could face default by August, according to Treasury Secretary there. US is collapsing, by the way. US might crash under its own weight if leadership there will not realize that reforms are needed, and reforms are needed yesterday. They don't really have much time, to take on some really, really serious reforms to reorganize the US from this current fallen empire into a republic again. And I'm not even sure this is possible to make such transformation, but at least they should try, because after all, US is their country, right? Because if nothing is changed, then eventually US will collapse under its own weight. It's just inevitable, right? Process is already underway, but so the US could default on its own obligations by the end of summer. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has warned in a letter to Congress on Friday. He urged lawmakers to act by either raising or suspending the debt ceiling, a cap on how much the government can borrow, to avoid running out of money to cover federal expenses. And by the way, remember one of the promises that Trump was making, that they're going to deal with their debt? Well, are they really? I said straight away that this is not happening, because I was sure, by the way, one of the first decisions that Trump will make is to make happier military-industrial complex and increase spendings on defense, formally on defense, in reality just to enrich military-industrial complex even further. And that's exactly what Trump did, by the way. And he is asking over $1 trillion for a Pentagon in the next year, right? For 2026. And if you take into account that there is at least 2 or 3 dozen of other security services in US, then overall spending formally on this defense and security will be about $1,500 billion, by the way, which is $1.5 trillion. Can US afford this? Of course, no. Of course not, right? And I mean, we don't have to guess. The US Treasury Secretary himself is saying that, either we have to borrow more or we're gonna default. So I don't know, man. I don't know what is going to happen with US. Theoretically speaking, I mean, it is possible, I guess, to reform this country into a republic again and to make it a decent member of world community. Not current anomaly that US is, that everyone hates basically. Even among so-called allies of US, by the way, in Europe, I mean, you will struggle to find anybody that has any sympathy for US, right? And I don't know, man. I don't know what is going to happen, but if US continues, or if US leadership continues to do nothing in regards to necessary reforms, then I don't think US has a bright future, or any future at all. But this is my take on the situation, dear friends. I might be wrong, isn't it? I'm not an expert in anything, really. I'm just a person with some 3 decades of experience in journalism, and that's it, really. All I know is to work with some news, and that's all. Anyways, what am I talking about? Let's have a conversation now, dear friends. That's the news part of it. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. And many thanks, dear friends, to all of you for joining this stream, and many thanks to all the members of our community who will join in upcoming minutes, or maybe watch this video later on. And let's go through some questions and comments. And dear friends, in case you want to make sure that I'm not gonna miss your question or your comment, you can send it through Boosty, or you can send it through PayPal, and my family members will let me know, so that I will react on it. Or otherwise, I will just go through chat, and whenever I see a question or the commenter, I will react on it. And to make sure that I would not miss your question, you can also put either capital Q before a question, or even entire question in the capital letters. Anyway, convenient for you. And Nikos, by the way, active member of our community, is commenting that Putin played them like a boss. He turned their ultimatum on their heads and issued Russia's terms, while giving a big F to Trump and US by showing that Russia and China are together. Well, Russia might turn the table upside down on the globalists that were thinking probably that, we got you. But no, Russia actually, Russian president actually made a quite interesting move, and by doing so, by offering these direct talks immediately, basically, I mean in just a couple of days, on 15th of May in Istanbul, as I said in the beginning of this video, Russian president actually offered their off-ramp to US. And I really want to believe that there are people in the White House in Washington that would see this opportunity and will use it. And in that case, I see possibility that Moscow and Washington can really de-escalate, not immediately, but work might start, real work in this direction. Because, dear friends, don't get me wrong, I mean, modern US, I think, is an extremely dangerous country for everybody, right? For its own citizens and for the rest of the world, as it is a majority of NATO member states that are controlled and run by extremely hostile groups, hostile towards humanity, in my personal opinion. But I still think if in theory at least, certain patriotic groups in US will manage to gain the power and start reforming US, transferring it to republic as it was imagined by founder fathers of that country, then I think there is a real perspective that Moscow, Washington, New Delhi, number of other capitals in this world, major capitals, will play crucial role in decades to come to maintain stability in this world. Because, dear friends, we have a China that is gonna become bigger and bigger and bigger, and just to make sure that, you know, future leadership of China will act with a friendly attitude and act normally, despite enormous weight of China, to make sure that, you know, balance is kept. I think it will be extremely important. Moscow, Washington, New Delhi, Johannesburg, or capital of South Africa is not Johannesburg, by the way. Oh, my bad. And not Lesotho. How could I forget? But anyways, you got my point, isn't it? So major capitals in this world to, you know, have to cooperate, and we need US, by the way. We need good, decent US. I mean humanity. You know, so therefore I think Russian president definitely making his moves based on that strategical calculus. Maybe today US is hostile to us, to Russia, and to basically everybody, right? But things might change. And therefore we should, I mean, when you are leader of the major country in this world, like Putin is, of course, he have to put away his emotions, his anger, and he have to act with their, you know, only based on strategical calculus. I mean, there is no place for emotions, right? There. So therefore, we should keep that in mind also. And I don't think Russia wants to, you know, show F to Trump or to, you know, in any ways disrespect US. I don't think that is the way that Russian leadership operates. Not really. And I mean, Russia-Chinese relations, basically, I mean, these relationships are building up since the collapse of Soviet Union and improving constantly. I remind you, dear friends, that during the Soviet era, China was actually used against Russia by the US. I mean, some people might be surprised to hear that, but during the Soviet era, especially after Mao Zedong, by the way, especially when relationships were not just established, but become great between Beijing and Washington, it was 70s, isn't it? Deng Xiaoping was leading China at that point. Well, West and US was using quite effectively China against Russia. And many people may don't know, dear friends, that in Afghanistan, for example, when Soviet troops entered Afghanistan, US was supporting Mujahideen forces, of course, but US support was accounting for maybe, I don't know, 10, 15, 20%. You know from where majority of support they were getting? You might be surprised, but that was China. They were getting majority support from China, weapons and everything. So what I want to say by this is that relationships between Moscow and Beijing was not really that friendly not so long ago, but you know, after Soviet Union collapsed, after China start, you know, gaining some power, economical power, and when US start realizing that, you know what, wow, we build a monster here. China get big based on Western investments, right, and Western transfer of technology, but at some point, I don't know how US leadership missed that understanding, but at some point it was so obvious that China will actually become so big that US will lose control, and eventually, you know, they will become major competitors on the world market, and eventually that might transfer to political hostilities also, and that's what exactly is happening, right? But US political class was so focused on hate of Soviet Union that they did not think that far, I guess. Or maybe they were just too optimistic and were dreaming about keeping China in control forever, but they lost it, right? So, as I said, since the collapse of Soviet Union, Russia-China relationships are getting better and better and better and better, and it's a bilateral interest, by the way, right? Both countries are under assault of US or the collective West, one way or another. And Moscow and Beijing don't really have much choice but to be friendly to each other, isn't it? And to help each other out. It's just, it is what it is. Also, Nikos is commenting that, or asking question, Levan, although I saw the pride of Russia during their parade, there are still some Russian YouTubers and their audience who even, through like Russia, feel shame about the SMO. These are mostly young people under the age of 13. They feel that they have seen May 9th and they don't consider it important. Has your daughter seen this shame expressed? Why is it still happening? Well, I don't know what my daughter is watching on YouTube, but what I do know is that I try my best to raise gooder citizens of Russian Federation, patriots of the Russian Federation, citizens that have respect for history, for culture, and therefore, my kids definitely are good Russians, right? That's what I know. And when it comes to certain groups of people, by the way, that think 9th of May means nothing for them, or people that have some other strange opinions. You know what? Russia is 150 million people almost, right? And there are some people that have some crazy ideas. And what? And what? Basically, So I can believe that. I don't know what YouTube channels you are talking about, dear friends. I don't watch those channels. I'm not interested, right? I don't really have time for that. But I can believe that some people are pretending to be, to love Russia, but same time are doing anything and everything to harm Russia, right? And maybe they are making money out of that, or maybe they have some other reasoning. I don't know. And yet again, I don't even care, really, as long as those people are not endangering society, safety of society, and safety of the country. Then let them think whatever they want, man. Who cares, right? You might find here in Russia some people that will say, no, they are better poets than Pushkin was. And what you gonna do about it? You might say, okay, and you will just pass and continue your day, isn't it? And you might find people in your country, by the way, in Greece, that might think that Greece did not play no role in European history or culture, and they might think that Greek history is nothing extraordinary. What you do in that case? Nothing. You will just say, what a strange person that is, right? And you just walk away. It is what it is, man. That's life. And when you have a big society, big community, people will have different opinions, and it's all okay, as long as they are not harming other people, by the way. As long as they are not endangering societies and state security, then let them think whatever they want. Come on. Who cares, right? That's my answer, dear friend. Jim Dmitry is commenting, this is poorly to get Trump to sanction Russia. Once he does that, he will be in the same position as Biden. Well, European, globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, UK, France, Germany, and others, they definitely want to keep US in this proxy war against Russia. That's for sure. And they will try everything they can, potentially, to provoke escalation, further escalation between Moscow and Washington. And they are doing this literally on a daily basis. Question is, forces that are behind Trump, are they really America First forces, or they are part of globalists and are playing the games? Which one is? Some members of our community disagree with me, strongly disagree with me that when I say that maybe Trump and these groups that are behind him are not really globalists, but are trying to move US away from the globalist grip. And members of our community, as I said, some members, opinion of whom I respect tremendously, are disagreement with this. They're saying that Trump and his team, they all are globalists, and we've been shown just some sort of game that they are playing, and maybe that is true. But I just, as one person, my hope is that, I mean, not even hope, but I think it would be great if this America First movement in US, or traditionalist movement, was and is really a thing, and independent from the globalists, and really are focused on US. In that case, US has a future, I think, and in that case, I also see potential for improving relationships between Russia and US, between US and many other countries worldwide, by the way, in time, not immediately, but in time, which is going to be beneficial for all of humanity, right? So therefore, I mean, we all may have opinions, but eventually we will find out. Question also, dear friend, I cannot read your nickname. I don't know, is it Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, or I'm not good at it, but I can see a question. Why did Georgia end up with the Georgian Dream while Ukraine has the Bandera nightmare? Georgia has a corruption and CIA NGOs too, so why didn't they open Southern Front? No Nazis in Tbilisi. Well, Georgia was never... In Georgia, by the way, you might see some nationalists, but in Georgia you would struggle to see any Nazi whatsoever. In Ukraine, Nazism and Nazi collaborants was a big thing, by the way. During the Second World War in Western Ukraine, in parts of modern Western Ukraine, there was a huge number of collaborants, right, with the Nazi Germany, and they were committing such horrendous crimes, by the way, that even SS officers, and as you know, SS units were most despicable units in Wehrmacht, right? And even SS officers were horrified by the atrocities that these Banderites, these Ukrainian Nazis were committing. But when it comes to Georgia, that's a whole different story. Unfortunately, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a extreme nationalism in Georgia. And because of it, unfortunately, ethnic conflicts emerge between Georgians and Ossetians. Ossetians are descendants of Alans, by the way, Alans or Skytho-Sarmatians. And also ethnic conflict started between Georgians and Abkhazians. And eventually, in 2008, under orders of Washington, Saakashvili, president of Georgia at the time, reignite basically civil war in South Ossetia, and then provoke war with Russia by issuing order to Georgian army to attack Russian peacekeepers, which was an act of war, obviously. After that, I had Georgian people really had enough, and little by little, but more and more people start waking up and realizing that, nationalist movement, this extreme nationalist movement was dying down even before, already during the Shevardnadze's presidency, but that still was some elements of that, and Americans, by the way, US Secret Services did try to play on nationalism, because name of party of Saakashvili was national movement, isn't it? Națională Remozroba in Georgian, so national movement. So they try to play on emotions of the people, but yet again, it did not really work. And after 2008, more and more people start waking up and realizing that this regime, this clearly Western implemented regime was an enemy of country, enemy of people. And that's why Georgian Dream eventually managed to succeed removing this Saakashvili's regime from power. And that's why they're managing to maintain power until now, because people that, maybe some people in Georgia have much criticism for Georgian Dream, current ruling party, but they're afraid that if they will not vote, not support this party, then maybe this Western controlled elements will return into power, like Saakashvili and his elements that are affiliated with them, and that would be, yet another disaster for the country, right? They will definitely sign up for a Southern Front or Second Front, but not the current party, by the way, that was promising exactly the opposite, to keep Georgia out of trouble, and that's why they got support, right, of majority, and they are keeping their word. They are keeping Georgia. First time, by the way, since the independence, since the collapse of Soviet Union, country had more than 10 years straight without war, internal or with a neighbor. First time, and that's on its own is achievement, So that's how, by the way. And what can I do, by the way? I may not be a big supporter of Georgian Dream. After all, they did not give me back my citizenship of Georgia. They did not even apologize for what Saakashvili's regime did when Saakashvili himself revoked my citizenship and in 2009, and therefore for 11 years I was a stateless person until I received Russian citizenship. So therefore I'm not a big fan of Georgian Dream for understandable reasons, but still I have to acknowledge that this current ruling party in Georgia did manage to keep country safe, and that's big, right? And when it comes to Nazism, by the way, yet again, there was never, this Nazism big thing in Georgia. Nazism in a way that it is presented in Ukraine, by the way. This Nazism that is associated with the Nazi Germany, that kind of Nazism. Georgia was struggling with nationalism, extreme forms of ethnic nationalism at some point, or ethnic chauvinism, but her country did manage to overcome that. I think for now, all people in Georgia are living in peace, and that's great. Because golden age of Georgia, by the way, if you take a look at the history, golden age of Georgia was when country was united, because based on some principles and beliefs, not based on ethnicity or religion or anything like that. 11th, 12th centuries are golden age of Georgia. And by the way, greatest Georgian king, if you ask many, David the Great, he was a multi-ethnic himself. His mom was Ossetian or Alan, right? And his granddaughter, during the which Georgia clearly, during the reign of Tamara, Georgia experienced true golden age, and her husband was David Suslan, also Ossetian. So, and by the way, Kharkzelebi, that's a surname of greater military leaders in Georgia. They were Kurds, by the way, ethnic Kurds that bring to Georgia great victories. They were leading armies, right? So that's what Georgia is really, when people are united based on some principles and beliefs, and it was very unfortunate to see in late 80s or early 90s this emergence of ethnic chauvinism, ethnic nationalism. But I think that time is in past now, and society managed to overcome this, this tragic situation, and society is much healthier now. Much healthier, and there is no issues of Nazism and fascism and that kind of stuff. I believe that's my opinion, by the way. Let's go through chat, by the way. Hopefully my answers are informative enough, dear friends. Also a question. Enough with I guess this was written when I was reading news. Enough with the news. Talk about important stuff. Do American men visiting Moscow, St. Petersburg get a Russian bride harms? Bride harms? How many Russian women dream of marrying American to go to US? Oh, I mean, this question is not for my program, by the way. You should contact some, I don't know, some websites and that are maybe organizing some matches between people of different countries. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that anybody from any country of this world can come to Russia, and as long as the person is behaving with respect, that person gonna be welcomed and treated well. That's how it is. Sorry, dear friends, if I'm gonna miss your question. Don Zugar is asking, can you schedule an interview with the great Russian pool player Fyodor Gorster? No, dear friend, I'm at this point I'm not doing interviews. I'm not inviting guests because live streams, to do live stream I have to use VPN, and this is not really best way to do live streams, and I'm not gonna risk invite guest and then possibly lose connection and end up in that not pleasant situation. So therefore I'm not risking, and until access to YouTube is not resumed without VPN, then I just would not be able to do live streams, invite guests and that kind of stuff. Sometime in the future, maybe, but Joe van Niekerk is asking, why can't Russia say straight no to negotiations with the Trump team about their ceasefire? Trump is directly involved. Russia must say loud, Trump is a war criminal, Russia is too diplomatic. Well, yet again, I mean, calculus of Russian leadership is, I guess, very complex. They are planning not for just today, tomorrow, day after, but probably in their calculus, they are reaching potentially even decades, and therefore, I guess one of the reasons why Russia is maybe even overly diplomatic with US is US's current administration is that they see potential, because just they see potential that if US will take that path of true de-escalation and then rebuilding the relationships with Russia, I mean, there is many ways two countries can be cooperative and also play crucial role in safety and the security of the world in general, right? Together with number of other countries, obviously. So therefore, I mean, it is easy, obviously, for Russian president to come out and say, you know what, we just had enough and go away now. We are not talking to you no more, right? But does it resolve anything? If for example, tomorrow Russian president will do that, will it help Russia in anything at all? No. It will not help nothing, right? And no one. So therefore, maintaining this diplomatic attitude, and I agree with you, extremely diplomatic attitude, can be irritating. And it is irritating for me also, by the way, time to time. But yet again, I can understand that calculus of those people that are in charge is much greater. I mean, they are taking in account so much news, by the way, and so much information that we will never even have access to ever, right? That I guess there always will be some things that we will just never understand because of the absence of whole the scale of information that they have, these decision makers, right? But I guess Russian President Vladimir Putin already proved himself, right, to be, good strategical player on geopolitical scale, and hopefully his decisions will prove once again to be, best possible ones. So that's I guess what I can say about it. But yet again, I mean, even if Russian leadership didn't say directly that, we don't talk about this nonsense, indirectly at least, this was said that, we are not interested in giving our enemies a break for a month. What we are offering is, talk. Let's have a direct talk. Let's start from that. And then, we will find out where we are, right? This was a quite good move, in my personal opinion. Questions. And dear friends, Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levan, let's see how China behaves when they reach unipolar status. Absolute power corrupts without exception. Yes, I agree with you, Nidish. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Power is corrupt, right? And absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is true, and always was, right? And that's why I'm talking about that. In long-term strategical plans that Moscow, New Delhi, Washington, hopefully, and many other capitals are working on, in these plans should be their focus on risks that can be created not immediately, not today, not tomorrow, or not even in a decade, but in 2 decades, 3 decades. They should think ahead, right? And that's why I'm saying that potentially, I see potential that Moscow, New Delhi, Washington, number of other capitals can actually, and should, by the way, be in a place to balance the world, because it is absolutely inevitable that China is gonna become an absolute dominant force, right? Economically, militarily, by the way, and at some point, in every possible way, right? And world needs to be in a place to deal with this situation calmly, peacefully, with just to make sure that whoever is in charge of that giant China that we're gonna see in 2 decades time, for example, or 3 decades time, just to make sure that whoever is leading that China at that moment will act respectfully to other nations' interests, to world community, right? We need these major capitals to be on a good working strategical partnership level, right? And Moscow and India are working on that, right? Moscow and New Delhi are working on this, and there are more capitals gonna have to join. That's what I'm talking about, exactly. I agree with you 100%. And dear friends, Nikos is asking also, I don't understand if Saakashvili's regime with their gulags was like Russia in 90s. Why does the young generation support him and his party? They grew up in that era. I mean, where are you getting this news, dear friend? I mean, from which sources? Which young people are supporting Saakashvili? I mean, and what percentage those young people are from, in general, from general population of young people? I mean, 1%, 2%, 5%. It's it's not the case, by the way. If Saakashvili or his supporters were supported by large numbers of any generation, probably they will be in a better place politically, right? Maybe they would be in power already, but they are not supported by majority of any generation. Not youngsters, not all the generations, by nobody. And if you are seeing that, you know what, in the videos during the protests, there was many young people. I mean, yes, they are paying to whomever will join these protests, right? And usually it's young people that, you know, may needed some additional, you know, couple of bucks, and they will take it, you know, and they will go there, you know, throw something into a policeman, and they go into a pub and drink a couple of beers. That's, if you think that's that is a support for that will gain them win in any any elections, then this is not the case, by the way. And majority of people that you see on videos, by the way, are either members of NGOs, political parties that were financed from outside of Georgia, or the people that was literally paid. And there are videos, by the way, also, isn't it? When people were getting paid for participating in these demonstrations. It's nothing extraordinary there. I guess similar stuff is happening all over Europe, by the way. This is just a method that was adopted by these organizers of color revolution all over their places, right? Nidish Kumar is also commenting, Levan, if Rafale or F-16 got shot, will Martin Baker ejection seat is used there? UK will know if those things happened. Well, I mean, yet again, Nidish, I think all these talks about India losing these planes, first of all, no plane is absolutely like invincible, isn't it? There is no such a plane in this world that is completely invincible. That's a first thing, right? Secondly, in high intensity conflict, planes may get shut down, right? Unfortunately, Russia recently lost her Su-30 plane over the Black Sea, and you know how this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky deployed back this maritime drone that was armed with their air-to-air missile that was adapted to be launched from this maritime drone. And unfortunately, you know, Russian Su-30, according to reports, was hit by that missile. Pilots managed to eject and they were safe, but still, Su-30 is a good plane, but you know, things happened. And that's one thing. And then we should keep in mind that both sides, by the way, Chinese military-industrial complex and U.S. military-industrial complex have reason to be, you know, they have a skin in this game, right? U.S. wants to sell to India their planes, and they want to now push this narrative that, well, French Rafale planes are complete garbage, by the way, which is not the case. French Rafale planes may not be best fourth generation planes, but they are good planes, right? They are good planes. And China is also pushing this narrative because they want to sell more their J-15s and J-10s that Pakistan has in its disposal, right? And also missiles to it, you know, air-to-air missiles. So these countries, US and their military-industrial complexes and propaganda outlets of these two countries have every reason to push false narratives, and that's exactly what they are doing. But if you ask me, I was monitoring situation. I read plenty enough reports, I see plenty enough videos and photos. I think Indian militaries prove themselves to be extremely capable, and they come up on the top. That's my personal expression. And I will also say that, yes, of course, I'm on India's side anyways, but I think I'm not at all exaggerating. That's my understanding. Nikos is also commenting, Levan, my only problem with China is that they are communist China. That ideology is dangerous. However, Russia and China should be together. They complement each other as superpowers. I mean, not just Russia and China should cooperate, but also China and India, also China and the US, China and every other country, by the way, in this world. I'm not at all against China. What I'm saying is that it is just inevitable that Chinese influence, Chinese economy will continue to grow, and Chinese influence will continue to grow. And at one point in 20, 30 years time, China is going to be absolutely dominant force in this world. It's just inevitable. In another 30 to 40 years, India will catch up, by the way. But you want to survive these 30, 40 years, isn't it? This time frame when China will be ultimate force in this world. And to make sure that things are kept in order, I think it only makes right if major capitals in this world will cooperate not just with Beijing, but also with each other to, just to stay on the safe side. That's all I'm saying. I am not at all against China, by the way. Why would I? Right? No. Nitish Kumar is commenting, the one Chinese air defense got totally exposed, got shot by drones. S-400 was an absolute beast. Yes, I'm glad to hear, I'm glad to hear this. And I was watching number of reports from Indian media outlets, and well, according to reports, S-400 did their work quite okay, and that's great, by the way. That's why India purchased this system, and if Indian side is okay with performance of this system, then great. Maybe sides will cooperate to build these air defense systems in India. That will bring additional technologies and the additional knowledge that will be useful for India's defense capabilities, for sure. And Michael Kennedy is here. Hello, Michael. China does not peddle ideology. It wants to trade. This is also true, dear friends. Even though there is a communist party in China, I never hear that they were pushing communist ideology over anybody. They just don't care. They do business. This is also true, right? I did not see any news that China in any country in African continent or in Latin America or in anywhere was pushing this communist ideology that, you have to think this way or that way, and that's all. No, it seems like they really want to do business, that's all. And they are great in it, by the way, at it. Historically, China was and is one of the greatest and oldest civilizations for a reason, right? Together with India, together with Iran and a number of others, for sure. If you are no good in many things, historically speaking, you're not going to succeed and definitely not going to survive for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Of course. And dear friends, I think we had a good conversation, isn't it? We had a good conversation. And if I may, dear friends, I will end this update now. And let me thank you all once again for joining the stream. Truly grateful, dear friends. And yes, have a wonderful day. Thank you for your attention, for your questions, comments, dear friends. It's always a pleasure to be part of this active community that exchange opinion in real time. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.